Hello all Jedi Academy fans and hopefully future modders. In this video, as well as some videos following after it, I'm going to show you how you can take a custom model that you've made and put it in the game engine for Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. First off, I've got Softimage Mod Tool opened up, and that's the software we're going to be using, mostly because it's free. There's a ton of resources for it. All of the game's source models are in the format that it can import, and it's just pretty much the most guaranteed way you can go as far as modeling and animation, and especially custom animations. So to get started, I'm going to take completely fresh model that's in no way you can see is set up for the game engine at all. This is, as some may recognize, Naked Snake, aka Big Boss, from Metal Gear Solid 3. This was originally a model made for the Valve source engine, Counter-Strike source to be precise. It was made by a buddy of mine, Cordo. I helped him out with it years back to get it working in game properly, and since then he gave me the source files, which I also have it already totally set up to the Valve source biped rig. But here I've stripped out that and just have the base model that we're gonna start with. As you can see, it's all one mesh. It's not segmented, it's not posed, it's not even the right scale. So I'm really gonna show you how you can take something that is totally was not meant to go into that game, since some people seem to have this misconception that you have to learn how to model for a game, which is totally not true. You just make a model any way you want, and then you worry about getting it in game, and that's the part I'm going to be showing you. So to start out, we're going to go on to a nice little website here, so you can see my homepage, and we are going to grab the character skeleton for Jedi Academy. All you need to do is just download this, and we'll be importing that file. Now you just want to go to File, Import, Model. It's a Softimage Model file, EMDL, which is very similar to a scene file. It contains a lot of the same elements. It's just made to be a slightly compressed format that we can trade between different versions of Softimage, but you really can't go backwards though, which is the only bad thing. So if you hit 8, open up your Explorer, you'll see we've got the entire skeleton for Jedi Academy, as well as all of the tags that you'll need. As the tags are little triangles that give the game a lot of information, like where to bolt weapons to that are held in the hand, as well as points where segmentation occurs, like the when you cut someone's arm off, as well as just general points where I believe damage is also calculated, but I could be wrong on that part. But you can see everything is pretty much there. And as you can see here, this model here is not the right size, not scaled to it. I'm pretty much going to start out by reposing this model using some pretty basic techniques, nothing too fancy. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into display options here, and I'm going to turn on X-ray mode and overlay. That way you can see through the model and see nulls and bone objects behind it. Now let's start out by scaling up. The first thing you want to start out by doing is getting the area from the shoulders to the hips the right scale. Because that way you can really get the general overall size where it needs to be. It could take some time, and I'm gonna try to spend a little bit of time on this. I mean, one thing too that you'll probably notice is it's gonna be very hard to get things like the head and the eyes all lined up with one another, since no person really has the same exact proportions and facial structure. You can try your best to get everything to line up. I mean, the next best thing would be to model your character around the skeleton, which actually can be a bit of a pain, just because a lot of people are going to be working with reference images and different proportions, since, like I said, no one's exactly the same. No one's, made in a factory. But unfortunately, you're going to be using a skeleton that's got certain proportions, and you cannot change the proportions of the skeleton, or else you'll really screw up the way the animations work in the game. So I think for right here, we're about as good as we're gonna get. I could maybe go in the side view and try to line it up a little bit better. That's really it. And now, as you can see, we kind of got the arms almost where we want them. Move this forward a tiny bit more. The arms are pretty well lined up, but those still need some tweaking. But the legs, you can see they're pretty far off. So we'll start by maybe moving these legs around. Now the first thing I'm going to start doing, this is one of the easiest ways I've found, is going into vertex select mode, and we're going to just start growing selection here. We're going to go up the leg to about right there, and with most of that leg selected, you'll still of course have to do some minor tweaks, but we'll get the bulk of it selected for now, all the way up to the pelvis. And we will actually go into rotate mode, and we're going to use object reference, and we will pick this femur bone here. What this will allow us to do is take all those vertexes and rotate everything out just like that. It's that easy. It's not the neatest way. You'll definitely have to do some minor adjustments to the area that you're moving, this area here, but it definitely gives you a pretty good start out. Let's see, let's move things back here for a minute. Let me select this here, and that should be good. Move that back out. Right about there. And we'll do the same. Let's check out the back side of that there. Yeah, that came out pretty decent. It probably won't even need much tweaking after that. And we'll just do the same thing for the other leg. grow selection all the way up to here. Select this and that, and we'll go back into here, pick this object and rotate that leg out. You can even go into your side view, and if you really want to be crazy about it, like me, I'm kind of super particular. Try to get everything to line up perfectly with the other leg. Now, some people will have a model where they've pretty much mirrored one side and the other, and if that's the case, you can just feel free to delete one whole half of the model, pose one side, and then just remirror it. But in this case, I don't have that luxury, since a lot of things are different from side to side. The arms are mostly the same, so I may be able to get away with that with the arms, but the legs are different. He's got a different structure there. Now, next thing is the length of the leg. Now, you might be a little freaked out of scaling the leg, but really, if you take a little time to edit it a bit afterwards, you won't notice any kind of weird stretching or anything like that. So by reference, we'll just go ahead and just use that same bone reference. We'll just scale the leg out, and what I'm going to try to do is get it lined up with the bottom edge of this tag here. I mean, you can move that tag, because that tag actually tells it where the model is going to be, like where that bottom edge of the foot is, where it'll make contact with the ground. So if that's sticking out, or if it's in, the model will either float above the ground or clip below it. So I'm just gonna leave that tag where it is for the sake of simplicity, and just try to scale that foot out to match up with it. You can see here, well, actually in the front view might be best, that it's getting pretty close. What I might do is get here and go real slowly here. There we go. It's probably as close as we'll get it, doing such a rough edit here, but as you can see, the scaling didn't really affect the model too much. I mean, maybe I can squish the foot a little bit more, and so it doesn't get scaled so much, but really it's not even noticeable, so I think we'll just go with that. And yours may be the same. If you have to move it even less especially, you probably won't even notice a difference. Like the leg won't look stretched out or anything like that. We'll just get those same verts selected that we had selected before, and we'll just scale everything out. Go by reference again, pick that bone, get down here and kind of keep an eye on it, get as close to that tag as possible. There we go. I think that's about as good as it's going to get without me spending a ton of time on it, which you guys feel free to really spend as much time as you want, but this is just a general how-to on how to kind of get things started. And now we will move up to the arms. Well, actually, the legs, well, the joints are pretty much where they need to be. The knees are right there along that edge loop, the joint. So I think the legs, we can pretty much leave those alone. I think they're pretty much good where they are. So we'll just move right along to the arms here. We'll just do the same thing, just using the grow selection, shift plus. I think I'm going to stop at this edge loop, and this is something that you'll really have to kind of make the best judgment on as far as how much to select with your model, because it's not going to be built exactly the same as this one. So you're really just going to have to use your best judgment on that. And from there, you can always just do some minor tweaking, minor adjustment to get everything exactly how you want it. Let's see, maybe I'll step back a little bit. Yeah, I think I'll only need to select that much, and same thing. We'll just go in here, pick that bone. We're just gonna rotate everything so that the arm matches up nicely. Might even scale it out a tiny bit. Actually, before we scale it out, I want to make sure it's lined up in all the other angles, because if I remember right, it doesn't quite line up exactly. It's kind of hard to see. But yeah, it needs to come forward a tiny bit like that. These bones are almost sticking out of the arm there. I want the hand to, I want to line up the hand the best I can from the start, as well as the elbow joint there. And now I will scale it out. Get that elbow right there. There we go. That's the loop right around the elbow. And now what I'll do is I'm going to select these again, and I'm just going to grow selection up to the elbow. And that way I can, because I believe there's a very, very slight bend to the elbow. I might even have to scale it down a tiny bit. Yeah, because as you can see, the hand isn't lining up. The forearm is a bit long on this model. So we'll just go back here and try to get that hand like that, a little bit closer to the, get the wrist, you know, more in the center of this joint here. As well as starting to get those first knuckles kind of lined up right from the start, rather than waiting till you're almost at the end. And now I'm going to do the same thing again, because annoyingly enough, the wrist has a slight bend to it. It is frame in on that. It's difficult to see with all these points and edges. Wonder if I use this mode. Doesn't really help much. Makes the texture a little less of a distraction though. Seems like I may have bent the arm a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go back in here and toy around with that a tiny bit. Now I think I'm gonna get the hand there a little better. Of course, pick your hand bone object. As you can see, this is probably the most tedious part, especially once you get down into all these finger joints here, because as you can see, they do not line up at all. We'll leave that up to you, whether how well you want to get all that posed, but I am going to do it the best of my ability. I'm going to start here with the thumb. Try to scale that back a tiny bit. Right there should be good. Since Jedi Academy doesn't have that final joint. This one here, so you're pretty much lining this part up with there. And here goes this. Try to get it. Close as possible. It's probably not going to sit right on the joint, but we will try to get it really close. That's actually pretty close. So there's the thumb. I'm just going to leave that slight bend at the end, since I believe most of the models have that anyways. And now start with the fingers here. You can see I've got quite a bit of work cut out for me here. Now the best advice I can say with the hands is to just import a base model and just model your hands over them. I wouldn't say use the hands from the game. A lot of people like to do that. I really don't. I just like to kind of make my own, but just use theirs as a reference. I would say import one and just model over it. Model it yourself, but just model on top of theirs, just so you get that pose right, because moving these fingers around to fit is just a huge pain. I mean, I had a pretty tough time with it on the Darth Revan model that Almighty Gur made, and it's no fun. It's a pain. You can see I even have to scale these fingers a tiny bit. If they don't line up 100% perfectly, don't get too bent out of shape about it, since the things like fingers and the facial animations, the game really doesn't animate those sorts of things very much. Like, there's just very few sequences that even do anything with those. So really don't stress out too much if you can't get things like the fingers to just line up absolutely perfect, because you'll probably have a hard time with them. For this finger, there actually isn't a bone. The last 3 fingers on the hand are actually all weighed to these 2 bones here. And so I'm just gonna kind of just pose this finger somewhere in the center and not worry too much. I'm gonna try to get it the way it's bent is slightly between those 2. I'll probably just leave that there like that for now. I'll just move on to the next finger. I might have to come back to that one. Once I get this one where it needs to be, I'll have a better idea. This one is kind of almost lined up with it from the side view already quite well, without much needing for adjustment. This one, I just realized I'm gonna have to scale it out a tiny bit. So it's a little more anatomically correct there. Get back to this one and deselect that loop there and scale this finger out. Since it's not really lining up well, probably have to scale that other one out a tiny bit more. Let's get back into texture decal mode here. Oops. So now, we'll try to get the rest of this finger lined up. This one here, I'll really have to scale this up some more. This is why you want to model your fingers over theirs. Okay, now, for this last one, we're just going to scale it out, actually bend it a little bit using the transforms of that object. That's the whole point of the reference, by the way, is you're referencing that object using its local transform values as a point to move to move those vertexes around. So, as you can see here, it's the hand for the most part is pretty much posed. What I can do now is actually open up this UV map here and check something, and it looks like the arms on this model are mirrored for the most part. Where's the arm mesh? There we go, up here. That's the let's turn on island select here. So the arms from the shoulder loop out are all mirrored. Lucky for me. Because what I will now do is this. I will select everything over here using the raycast select. Here, let me make sure I've got everything right. Okay, now I see how it goes. Oops, too much. Go into regular polygon select instead of raycast here for this, for the big bulk. Make sure we get everything selected there and delete. What I'm going to do is now do this. And I will extract polygons keep, put in a negative value for the scaling, freeze the scaling. Oh, that didn't work out good. Oh, seems like in this scene we've got some mixed viewing mode. There we go. Undo that, all that stupid stuff I did. Turn off this mixed viewing mode, and there we go. Now we have that. And I will just rejoin these here. Turn the tolerance down low enough to where that arm gets welded, but doesn't affect anything else. There we go. Merge, merge, and delete inputs. And there you have it. We've got our model fully posed. Everything seemed to go okay with the merge. Now, the last little part of this, we're going to set up some groups here to make things a little bit easier on ourselves. First of all, we'll expand all from here. We're going to select all of the bones, and we are going to make a group. as you can see, we can kind of control some visibility and selectability options independently from the viewport options. And we're just gonna call this let's say bones symbol. Now for the next part, we've got our mesh root here, everything stupid triangle and everything below it. We're going to make another group, and that'll be tags. And then that'll be that for those. Eventually, as we break the model up, we can make more groups pertaining to the model itself and all of its different parts, as well as the LODs if you want. But for now, we have that there as we need it, and that pretty much concludes this video. And for the next part, we will move on to enveloping the model.